Welcome to this presentation and Q&A about the sudden oak death blitz.
Bienvenidos a esta presentación sobre preguntas y respuestas sobre la muerte súbita del roble.
This is a bilingual event, and I want to thank SSU naturalist Eri Sawagiri for translating.
Este es un evento bilingüe y quiero agradecer a Eri Sawagiri, nuestra naturalista, por ser nuestra intérprete hoy.
So before we get started, is there anyone here who's more comfortable communicating in Spanish than English?
Antes de comenzar, quisiéramos saber si aquí hay alguna persona que se sienta más cómodo en hablando español que en inglés.
If so, let us know now, and Eri will stay to help facilitate communication.
Si es así, por favor, háganoslo saber ahora, así podré estar durante la presentación y ayudarle.
No? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Eri, for being here. We didn't have any Spanish speakers register, but I wanted to make sure. So thank you, Eri. It's so wonderful to have you translate all our materials. Okay, our presenters today come from the UC Master Gardener program of Sonoma County. We have two of their sudden oak death specialists, Janet Calhoun and Alan Chesterman, and they've both been working on this team for over a decade, 14 years, I think. My name is Carrie, and I am the outreach lead at the Center for Environmental Inquiry. And I also coordinate the sudden oak death program with UC Cooperative Extension. So I have two hats on today. But first, I'm going to tell you about SSU's Center for Environmental Inquiry. I am also going to go ahead and mute everybody so that we don't have background noise. And if you have anything to say, you can unmute yourself and speak up. Great. So the center's public events are usually done on site at either Osborne Preserve on Sonoma Mountain in Pengrove or at Galbraith Preserve near Yorkville in Mendocino. But like most of the world, they have gone virtual since last spring. It's actually been really wonderful having folks join us from across the country and indeed sometimes across the globe. And we're really excited to help you connect to nature and learn how you can make a difference even during a global pandemic. So first, can we have everyone take a moment and sign in by typing your full name into the chat box? That would be helpful. So while you're doing that, the Center for Environmental Inquiry at SSU mobilizes faculty, students, and community to solve complex environmental challenges, turning education into action. And we invite you to join our diverse community of learners and problem solvers, no matter your background or connection to the university, because all sectors of society and all parts of the community have to get involved if we're going to be successful. We want you to leave today with a better understanding of our connection with the environment and skills that lead to sustainable solutions. There's many ways to get engaged with the center. You can engage in research, take one of our trainings, our naturalist or land management programs, learn about the virtual field collaboration for undergraduate classes. There's internships and student jobs. You can access data. You can lead events like this if you have an expertise. You can partner with us on projects or help create more programs like this by donating, since they're actually funded completely by the generous support of donors. So thank you for joining today. Please I want you all to know that each of you has a critical role to play. And I hope that you'll choose to get environmentally ready with us as we tackle the greatest environmental challenges in history. So today we are going to focus in on a citizen science project that's a partnership between the UC Master Gardener program of Sonoma County, which I coordinate through UC Cooperative Extension, and UC Berkeley's Forest Pathology and Mycology Laboratory. And that's run by Dr. Matteo Garballato, who conceived the statewide Sudden Oak Death Blitz project. The Blitz helps protect our native oaks and tanoak forests, which are vital ecosystems in California. And they do everything from support hundreds of species of plants and animals to supplying ecosystem services that we all rely on for food and water, health, economy, culture, and happiness. So this project really relies on volunteers like yourself, and we're very grateful to you all for being here today and for your plans to go out and sample this weekend or through Tuesday. So just some background, the center first got involved in the sudden oak death blitzes in 2016. And that's when we went out and sampled on the Galbraith Preserve. Since then, the public and SSU volunteers have sampled every year at both Galbraith and Osborne Preserves. So this cooperative effort has contributed hundreds of trees to the sod Blitz database as a whole. And it also helps the center gain valuable information that can be used in management decisions on our lands. It also grows the network of participation for both the Blitz and the center, and it gets the word out to turn education into action. So we're really happy to have all these groups come together and help nature in this way. Okay, here's what we're going to do today. So Janet will present a short slideshow. Looks like that's ready to go. And then Alan will give a brief demo. And then after that, the rest of the time we'll spend answering questions about how to go out and do the Blitz successfully. At the end, if we have figured out how to do the Blitz, then we'll open up for general sudden oak death questions. So feel free to email me after the event for any follow-up. I will put both of my email addresses in the chat. The first one is going to be about corresponding with the Center for Environmental Inquiry, and the other one is for corresponding about sudden oak death and the Blitz. So at this time, if everyone could just make sure your audio is muted, feel free to type anything into the chat if you need my attention, or raise your hand, whatever works best for you. With that, I will turn it over to Janet.
Thank you so much, and I'm so glad you're here this evening on a Friday night. This is a University of California presentation. Normally it's about 2 hours, won't keep you there that long. We're trying to cut it down to just the basic, very basic, maybe five to 7 minutes, hopefully. And if you have questions, you're certainly welcome to ask. So Sonoma County Master Gardeners was established to actually help our scientists at UCCE and to take over some of the educational opportunities for our public and give information on gardening, agriculture, and the like. We man a desk at the University Center where we take walk-ins, we identify insects, diseases, whatever we can to help the public. And we're available through email or phone now because of COVID. And hopefully by the summer, we'll have our desk open again to the public. So we work in conjunction. We were trained by UC California specialist pathologists and mycology lab on sudden oak death. They're one of the leading scientific groups that have been working on it. And it's funded by grants. University relies on grants for this program. So Department of Forestry, and there are also private forest interests, Pacific Gas and Electric, USDA, and the United States Department of Forestry actually pay for the sod Blitz. So a little bit of history on it. What is sod? This is a picture of Marin County in about 2000. And what scientists were seeing from the early 1990s well into 1995 was this incredible change in the forest situation. We had trees that would go from very healthy to an ugly green yellow to dark brown and dead in a very short period of time. We've never seen it before. Scientists didn't know what it was. Arborists were stymied. And what they found out was, well, the first theories were what's going on. They saw insects that are native to California infesting these trees. And the first thing they said, well, it's the insects, which absolutely wasn't true. And it wasn't until 2000 that scientists at UC Davis identified what was really happening in our forest. And what was happening is we had an exotic pathogen that had been introduced to California from, we believe, Cambodia, Vietnam, through the nursery trade. And those plants came in carrying the pathogen. We didn't know what it was. Nurseries didn't know what it was. And it was introduced repeatedly through the 80s and early 90s into California, but usually to, urban environments. When they went to urban environments that were close to our forests, interfacing with forest areas, it escaped into our forests. And that's how we got it now throughout our forest area in California. The actual disease doesn't kill fast, though it was given the monitor of sudden oak death because that's what we saw. But our oaks actually were in the 3rd or 5th year of struggling with the disease. Now, tanoak, which are also prevalent in our redwood and some of our oak forests, is not a true oak. It's a different genus, and it dies within 1 to 2 years. But a true oak, 3 to 5 before we really start seeing the effects of the disease inside an oak tree. So one of the most fascinating things about this pathogen to me is the pathogen itself. It's amazing. On the left of your screen, you'll see a survival spore that's created. It's called a chlamydospore. And you can see how thick the walls are on this spore. And it's made to survive drought times, things that are not hospitable to this pathogen. And the pathogen is actually a water mold. So it thrives when there's water, and it can sporulate when there's water. And these are 2 of the reproductive structures that this pathogen will make. On the right is what we call a sporangia. And the whole sporangia can break off in wind-driven rain in the early springs and land on plants where it lands on a host that it can grow on its foliar leaves. And let's see if this comes up. This is what it looks like. The sporangia is just filled with these tiny little spores, DNA spores, that are called zoospores. And they have phalangia on 2 sides where whip little organs where they can swim and manipulate and move through the environment. They're pretty incredible. They have chemical gradients. They can follow that, electrical gradients, move towards light or wave towards light. And most of our native Phytophthora are ground, move only through the ground, and they actually can sense where hosts are. This one is aerial, and it moves through the environment, bouncing in wind-driven rain from trees, from the hosts, onto other plants, and sometimes eventually lands on an oak. Stop that. So in our California environment, we currently have P. ramorum has spread from the 2 counties that originally moved in forests, which is Marin County near Mount Tamalpais and Santa Cruz County. Those were the first that saw this massive die-off of trees. And from there, it's spreading both north and south. So in 2016, it was found in San Luis Obispo, but we think that was a false positive because we haven't been able to confirm that since. But in 2019, it was also found in Del Norte County. So it's really moving up along the coastal areas where it has the right environment for this particular pathogen. It's a water mold, doesn't really like a lot of heat. We don't see it as you cross the Central Valley or into the Sierra at this time. Now, the first question we usually ask a client is when they say they think they may have it is, what oak do you have? There are really only 4 susceptible oaks that are terminal hosts that will be killed by this pathogen. And so black oak, coastal live oak, canyon oak, and Shreve's oak. Black and coastal are the ones that we know, especially here in Sonoma County. Coastal live oak is just everywhere, and it's an absolutely beautiful, spectacular tree. Canyon is more in the warmer areas, maybe up more towards Cloverdale, and Shreve's is not really an oak that we see that much in Sonoma County. It's typically found in more southern from us. but there are some on 128 between Cloverdale and the coast when you're going towards the coast. So if you do have a susceptible oak, these are the first signs that you see, and usually it's after the tree's been infected for some time. You see bleeding, and this dark ooze, which is a natural way trees try to expel something that they know is foreign and shouldn't be there, sometimes called pitching out. And there's no pathogen in the bleeding. It's just the natural reaction of the tree to try to get rid of something that is injuring it. And typically the bleeding is on the tree 10 feet or lower, not up in the higher canopy of the tree. And that is because a lot of times it's splashed up from the ground or on low foliage onto the base of the tree. So we see it on the lower part of the bole of the tree. And these are the signs that we typically see on a tanoak. There is bleeding, but oftentimes a tanoak will die within 1 to 2 years of infection, and they don't have enough time to react to the pathogen. So most of the time we don't see bleeding on tanoak. What you do see instead is the pathogen moves up the petiole of the leaf, the main part of the leaf in the center, and starts, it will kill the leaf. It will turn black. And you can see on the picture on the left, the pathogen moving up the petiole, or here. So up the center part of the leaf. And then we get what's called a shepherd's crook. Any new growth goes up and dies before it has a chance to really grow and sprout out. And so tanoaks die. There was a study that we helped UC with on regeneration of tanoak, and new tanoaks that grow in the same space die at a much younger age before they're more than just a few feet high. So this is really devastating, especially in like a redwood forest in like Armstrong. It's the lower canopy that we see these. And Sonoma County has just lost so many of them. There are very few left in our natural environment. Now, there's another part of the puzzle here with the death. It's what we call secondary infections. And secondary infections, those are the beetles and microorganisms that are naturally here. They're native to California. Their job in a forest is to identify trees that are distressed, in trouble. They congregate on them and they destroy them. They go in, they colonize, they multiply, and they actually help hasten the death of the tree. What you're seeing in this picture is pretty amazing. These are what we call ambrosia beetles, and ambrosia beetles move into the tree, into the center of the tree. They don't eat the wood at all, but they make tunnels, and they bring with them, the female brings with her fungal spores. And so what they do is they create these fungal gardens inside the center of the tree, and that's their food. That's what they feed their larvae. And fungus, what does it do? It rots. So it's actually decaying the tree now from the inside, from the core of the tree, from the base of the tree, which is what gives it its strength. And so some oak death trees can be very dangerous. You don't think they are, but there's nothing holding them up. And in wind-driven rains or in a heavy storm or wind where there's a lot of wind, the whole tree can come down. So they can be very dangerous trees if they're left in the environment. So can an oak transmit it to another oak? The answer is no. Oaks, once the pathogen is inside an oak, it's trapped there and it doesn't escape. And it's death for the pathogen and death for the oak. So they don't transmit it between oak to oak. You need foliar hosts. And foliar hosts are the plants with P. remorum can live on their leaves, their foliage, and multiply and spot and just, grow and grow and grow with the presence of water. Our hosts, main hosts here, especially in a woodland environment, is California bay laurel and tan bark oak. So those are the two leaves that the University of California has asked you to collect for them, suspicious looking leaves from these two trees, because there's the driver. And on a California bay laurel tree, the pathogen is in where the water drips, or the tip of the tree, the tip of the leaves. And there can be 10,000 spores on a centimeter of that leaf. So there are millions and millions of spores on these trees. And the same with tan bark. Tan bark oak is a terminal host. It's also a foliar host. So it just breathes down that pathogen on top of itself and doesn't have a chance at all to survive. Now, in the urban setting, two of the major ones that we know are the ones that brought it to California are rhododendrons and camellias. If you're interested, you can go to the suddendeath.org website. They started categorizing years ago what plants were hosts for this pathogen, thinking if we could name the 10 that are, we just won't plant them. Well, almost everything that's a California native or that we have here is a host. But the spore load is what's important. And on California bay and tan, and these two that we have in the urban settings, rhodo and camellias right now, are considered the highest spore count plants. Well, moving on, that doesn't look right. Missing one.
It comes up in a minute.
Okay, so UC Berkeley, based on the information that we give them, state of California, and there are 22 different, 22 blitzes held throughout the state. The information we give them is used for a lot of things. Number one, they save all positive samples for genetic testing and to do genome testing. And it's been a boon for them to have that. And the other, the data that they have, they've been able to create different maps that you can use. And this is SCOmap Mobile. It's a free download. And it was developed a few years ago by UC Berkeley. And what it tells you uses GC, you can call it up. It tells you what testing has been done. And if we have positive trees, which are marked red, or not positive trees, which are green. Now, you can see on the Napa side, a little warmer than we are, mostly green at this point. But they also have the ability, if you click on any one of these trees, it spiders out, like the screen at the very top. So it spiders out and tells you, okay, but we've also seen these in the last few years. And so far, this place is all green. But you might hit a red and find out it's the only red that we've tested and everything else around it is green. So it's important. You can tell over time where this pathogen is moving and how close it is to you. And with that, Berkeley has a program where you can go on and see if you're at low risk, medium risk, or high risk, and what their recommendations are for a homeowner to do to make sure you keep that pathogen away from you. I didn't get that one. So blitzes in the past, some of the most important ones came up. Earlier ones, when we would have dry years, we saw just this tremendous decrease in the amount of pathogen that was there. And we thought, great. And unfortunately, The public said, well, it's not here anymore. Yes, it was. We got the chlamydia spores that overwinter and could spend 6 years, 8 years waiting for the environmental conditions to be right for it. So this is just kind of an overview that Carrie was nice enough to put together for 19 and 20. You can see the differences that are there. And what does this mean? Well, in the 22 blitzes we had last year, we had almost 500 people, 499 participants. And we collected samples from 267 trees. And a lot of trees surveyed, 21,900 trees surveyed, with over 2,000 samples that were sent in. And that just gives the university and other scientists this great database to figure out what's going on. And the infection rate in 2020 was 7.4% of the trees were infected. The year before, in 2019, it was 6.1. We had a dry year, okay? So we know now that that pathogen is entrenched. It's here, it's not going anywhere. And so we need to be really vigilant about what we do, how much we know, what we do, and that we can protect our property and our landscape. There's another one. What does it mean? Well, basically, as the rain, when we have rain, that's great. When we don't have rain, we're still seeing the pathogen. There, for some reason this came out really late. It's about sod blitz, and we've talked about that. Alan's going to be talking to you more about filling out the paperwork. If you want to go over that and have a refresher on that, he's going to be here. And it's been a great opportunity for us to be part of it. We do presentations to any community event that would like us to come, and hopefully we'll be able to do that next fall after the COVID is relaxed. And so that's that. So this is just Blitz results in Sonoma County. We really do want to help you plan to manage for P. ramorum. There are a lot of things you can do. There are preventatives that can keep susceptible oak healthy. And we also talk about how to keep the pathogen from coming to your property, including if you buy plants, make sure that you quarantine them for at least a month, water them and keep them away. Don't put them in your landscape, which is, it's really hard to do, I know, because that's what you want to do is get them in the ground. But this pathogen can also be in soil, especially if it's coming from a nursery or from an area you don't know. And once you start adding water to that plant, it's a water pathogen and it starts sporulating and growing. So there are a lot of really great information that's available to you, or you can contact us if you'd like, or Carrie. And Master Gardeners Help Desk, we run a help desk and we're still doing that even though we're doing it from home. And these are the websites to do email, or you can call and we'll accept either way. Any questions that you have on gardening, or especially about sod, those questions get referred to me and Carrie. The Berkeley Forest Pathology Lab, there's this website, fabulous website, gets better every time I go on it. They have a frequently asked questions section where you can actually ask a pathologist about something that's going on with your tree. So there's a world of information that really wasn't available just a few years ago. And we, you know, the more we learn, the more we're able to provide. So it's been my pleasure. And Carrie, back to you, my dear.
Thank you, Janet. Yes, condensing 2 hours into 20 minutes. Thank you for that. It was amazing. So I would love to turn it over to Alan now so that he can give us a quick demo about how he went out and looked for some samples today and how that turned out for him.
Hi, folks. A quick overview of what you get. Maybe you already have some of these, but you get an envelope into which you put your samples and your data sheet. And the data sheet has all kinds of information on there. It says they would like to know who you are. And so I just used my initials. And that also enables you, when the results come out, to see which of your samples were actually positive by, when it on SCOmap Mobile is where you find that out. And I collect personally about 20 samples total in the first day, and maybe some more the second day. And don't feel bad if not all yours are positive, because the majority of mine are also not positive. And I think every one leaf I put in there looks to me like, oh, that's definitely sudden oak death. No, it's not. So I went out in my backyard, for example. I have a great big bay tree. It's about 40 feet tall. And I found this sample that, oh my gosh, that could be sudden oak death, but it's not, because it's something else. It doesn't have if you look at the sample sheet that comes with it, there should be a border that's between the brown and the green that's definitely in between, like yellowish. And then you get leaves like this, where there's a couple of spots on there. That doesn't have anything to do with sudden oak death. That's something else. So if I were checking out my tree, I would turn in one of these pink sheets, which you fill out and put in the envelope, but it's for a non-symptomatic oak tree. And to be honest with you, I've never turned in one of these, because I find so many what I think are symptomatic, and they just don't happen to be symptomatic. Oh well. Then you also get this wonderful packet of blue tags that you can put on the trees you sampled. I send all mine back because anyway, I don't like to put them on the trees, and I know which trees. I'd sample a lot of the same trees every year. Don't forget that this SCOmap mobile app that here's I don't know if you can see that too well, but that's just the result of the app page. And right over here is one of the results that it shows the whole Western US. So you just scroll out, move it until you get to where you are. Or when you're collecting, you hit the risk button and you get this result. It tells you the exact lat long and how close you are to another positive. If you're going to use that while you're out in the wild, make sure that you open the app before you go off the grid. It works just fine with no coverage from anything, no phone coverage, no router coverage. It works fine if you open it before you go. After, maybe it might work, but I found the results to be rather abysmal. And this year, you get a pencil with an eraser. Like you never make mistakes. This is the first time they followed my recommendation that I make a lot of mistakes. No, I don't. But on my writing is sometimes leaves something to be desired, so you can fix that. If you really don't like SCOmap Mobile, 10 years ago, I would take a map, a topo map with me and make little marks on there, and then go back home, look up Google Earth and figure it out that way. And before that, you'd say, I'm 150 yards west of this mailbox on West Side Road. And that's, there's a dot there somewhere that with a positive result, and I can't find that tree anymore because I've actually looked on SCOmap Mobile, you know, in the last couple of years, and there's not even an oak tree there. The wagon trees, we already did all that. A couple of is anybody not going collecting, just hanging out to get information?
There were
Okay.
3 people that said they just wanted to come to the meeting, but most people are collecting.
Oh, great. I won't go into the details of filling out every little thing on the 2 different, the white and the pink info sheet that you put in, but just make sure that what I do is I also label each card like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because otherwise you're going to lose track pretty quickly, and put them in the great big envelope. Those goes back to Doug Schmidt, who is Mateo's right-hand man. If you don't know where to go collect, if you're looking for bay trees, you might want to go to some like habitat that has a little more moisture, like a seasonal creek even that goes through it, or a live creek. You're much more likely to find bays there. If you want to find tan oaks, go up to Margot's place, because they've got more tan oaks up there than I've ever seen in my entire life. And but it's a lot drier up there at Galbraith. But they do have not just seasonal creeks going through there, but when I've gone down closer to the creeks up at Galbraith, yeah, there are plenty of bays there, but further away from them, it's almost all tan oaks. That's about all I've got. Any questions about collecting?
That's great, Alan. That helps so much to go step by step. I know that you've all watched the training, but if you've never done it, it can still feel like, oh, wait, I just got a ton of information. What do I do? So it's great to see the pieces of the packet. So yeah, it is 6:38. So for the rest of the hour, we're just going to take questions. So the first person's hand I see is Kevin, if you want to ask your question.
Yeah, I'm a little confused about why there are so few pink. There's only 2 pink cards, and obviously a lot of maybe 10 white ones. So if we see more than 2 uninfected or non-symptomatic trees, what do we do? And I assume this is on the bay or the oak. That was the other question. Are they for the bay or the oak trees?
It's on the bay tree.
Oh, just the bay. Okay.
That's the only leaves or a tan oak.
Okay.
But that doesn't give them much information. And when I'm out collecting, oh, by the way, if you do sample a tree, wait 100 yards before you sample another tree. I'm not sure, but they do want you to keep track of how many trees you looked at. And to look at a tree, you can't just stroll by it. And it usually, well, where I'm sampling, it's usually on a steep hill. I can't walk around it either. But I look for at least 45 seconds, a minute or 2 at all the leaves that I could reach. And most of the symptomatic ones are low anyway. But if I filled out a pink card for all the oaks that I pass by, they don't, I'd never have enough. So I have enough symptomatic ones, and that's what they're really interested in. But I guess maybe if you're walking around and you haven't seen one for all day long, yeah, then I might fill out one of the pink ones. But
and that's what I was thinking too, Alan, is basically the pink cards are if you're in an area with a lot of bay trees or tan oaks, but you don't see any symptoms, a pink card is a way for you to say, we did look here, but we don't see any symptoms.
Okay.
So if you are seeing some trees with symptoms and some without, the pink cards aren't as useful. It's really if you're like, my whole property looks fine.
Okay. I know that's not true.
But
sorry.
I think it's still important that they keep tick marks on the back of the envelope so that they can record how many trees they actually looked at. And that's fine. And that's important. That's part of the information that UC uses, and it's part of what's in their statistics
Okay.
when they do this. So that's an important thing. And just, keep your pencil out and do tick marks on the back of the envelope. And then you say, well, I looked at 120 trees, only
Okay.
collected from 4, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's a good thing.
So just to be clear, so we're keeping track of each tree or not? We're counting the number of trees we actually look at, and it's like a minute and a half, I think he said on
Right.
the video. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Okay.
And they do want,
Oh, go ahead.
that's a good, they definitely need to know how many trees you looked at to get the
number. Okay.
Right.
get the leaves that you did turn in, and you looked at 5 trees before you found one with a bad leaf.
Okay.
And the really neat thing is the pathogen is usually not in the top of the tree. It's always in the very lowest part of the canopy. So if you have the ability to do like 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and just do that around the tree and watch, you can see it if it's there. It's not going to be on every leaf. This pathogen is rather tricky. So it'll be on leaves, but it's not on all of the canopy.
Okay.
And one quick clarification is if you're just doing the check marks on the packet, you're not actually pulling a leaf from that tree. If you see even one potentially infected leaf, you don't have to keep looking around. You can just say that one looks infected and move on. You don't have to spend a whole 2 minutes looking at the tree, right?
Okay.
It's just whether you see any potential infection on that tree or not.
And then if you see, so that's another question I had. So it says 5 to 10 leaves, I think, or 6 to 10 from an infected tree. If you see an infected tree with only 2 leaves, what do you do there? Do you?
Personally, it says 6 to 10. I've put, I don't think I've ever put in 1 leaf, but I put in as few as 2 or 3 if they really look symptomatic to me. If they're borderline, maybe, no, then I just move to the next tree. But if I can find 6, that's great. If I can only find 4, that's good enough. And I don't think as I said, I've done as little as 2.
Okay. And that counts as an infected tree, though, even if you don't take leaves from it?
No, that would be
an asymptomatic.
From a symptomatic bay leaf.
Okay.
And I am going to jump in because it's unique to this year because you're actually returning all of your leaves in a mailed packet to UC Berkeley through the post office. I did a lot of precise calculations for amount of postage. So do not put more than 6 leaves in, or else the package will weigh too much and your leaves will not make it back to Berkeley.
Okay.
So do not put more than 6 leaves in this year.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you.
And the reason Berkeley wants that is what they do when those leaves come in, they plate them. They have a little punch and they punch the different leaves and plate them on, it's a V8 auger. So that's what they put it on. And that's what they use. So the more leaves that they have, up to 6, evidently this year, is a better chance of seeing that the pathogen is there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you're doing. You're providing enough. So their sample is going to be representative of that tree. That's it.
Penny, I see your hand up. And everyone, Penny is also an amazing UC Master Gardener from Sonoma County. Thanks for joining us, Penny.
Thanks, Carrie. I have tan oaks and bays on my property. I don't have other susceptible plants. So, but when you say the number of trees, I'm assuming you want the number of tan oaks that I've looked at and the number of bays I've looked at, not just the number of plants that I've looked at.
Correct.
Dumb question, but.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
That's correct. And it's a unique property, Penny. If you're able to sample some tan oaks and some bays, that's valuable.
It's pretty common out here in West County.
Yeah, and the tan oak symptoms are a bit trickier. So make sure you really look at those ID guides for what that looks like. Because
Yeah, I actually am a little concerned about that because when we first bought the property, the contractor said, oh, this has sudden oak death, that has sudden oak death, the other has sudden oak death. You know, now I'm beginning to wonder. But I do know that driving the streets here in this area, the number of dead tan oaks is horrifying. So I don't know what.
Have you, Penny, have you had a chance to look at SCOmap Mobile to see if
Yes, I did.
if the university has said their stuff there or not?
There's been very little sampling
Oh, really?
west of Occidental.
Well, I can tell you that over the years, we've talked to property owners who have had arborists come and they've spent hundreds of dollars doing the treatment for their trees, only to find out when I get there, I say they're white oaks. So you just have to be careful, you know, if I would rely on what you see, the information they are giving you. And if you're not seeing it, maybe you should get some master gardeners together and go out and look at the area you are in. I know that you're west of Occidental, because there was a lot of sod going up Coleman Valley Road a few years ago. I mean, a lot that took out a lot of trees. So I don't know exactly where you are, West County.
Yeah, that is where I am, just a
Yeah.
little further west and north of, no, west and, oh well, south, I guess, of Coleman Valley Road.
So I'm up in Mendocino County and we have a lot of dead tan oaks. And last year I sent in a lot of leaves and they all came back negative. What else could be causing them to die? I mean, each year I see more and more, and it's very quick. We have the same thing up on the Galbraith Preserve, where it varies majorly just over a very short period of time, but it doesn't test as sudden oak death. Any thoughts?
My thought is that I have the same issue, and it's a great question.
Drought is one of
Drought.
the biggest issues that you have with, I mean, with oak and with all of our trees. Climate change. We don't have any big trees on our property now. We had to take them all out, and it was because of drought and beetles. So they didn't have sod, but they were dying. We walk at Rego Ranch, which is just north of us, northwest. And the trees are in trouble there too. And it has nothing to do with sod. I've never seen a bay there. It's drought. It's other issues. So I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
any other questions? This is the time to ask. Does everyone feel pretty confident about what they're going to do? Oh, it looks like Robin, you have a question.
Yeah, I have a question or two, actually. I came in a little late, so I'm sorry if this was answered already, but it says on the card, are there any symptomatic oaks nearby? I'm wondering what exactly that means. Like, is it specific symptom you're looking for? Like, is it dead, or is it, or should we be looking for, you know, the lesions and things like that?
So Matteo Garbalato from UC Berkeley says, you would want to be pretty darn sure that that oak tree has sudden oak death if you mark that box. So if you are someone who has been trained in identification, then great, go for it if you see a symptom. But if you aren't trained in it, you're really going to want to see that really classic bleeding canker that Janet showed in the PowerPoint. And that's also in the training video. So if you see a classic bleeding canker on the trunk of a tree, then count it. Perhaps if you also see an oak tree that has the hypoxylon, the little black round fungal bodies, and a stain where a canker used to be, that probably also counts. But you don't want to say, oh, it looks sick, it's symptomatic. You want to be pretty darn sure. That's what Matteo told us.
Cool, thanks. The other sort of just overarching question I have is, so we have about 7 acres, and it's, you know, tan oaks, bays, and then oaks and redwoods. do you think it would be better to go about it and sort of like, you know, looking at the overall property and spreading out, like, and like kind of looking, or should we be focusing on like the creek and more moist area and then start going 100 yards, 100 yards, 100 yards? I guess I'm just trying to figure out, you know, what would benefit the research more? Is it to get an overall picture of the entire property or to focus on an area where it might be more present?
Alan or Janet, any thoughts on that?
If it was my property, I would sample way less than 100 yards away. I would sample anything that looked remotely like it's you know, a leaf that it has the infection, and turn it in, because you want to know on your own property every possibility. So you might want to bend the rules a little bit.
Well, even Garbolato has said if it's shorter distance between the trees that you want to collect. So you might want to say, okay, this year we're going to look at down by the creek or wherever. We're going to really examine where we're closer to water and where we've got other things. I don't know what else is growing there, but you know, you just pick a quarter and do it that way. And if it all comes back native, you know, you're good. And yeah, 7 acres is amazing.
And I kind of do a two-pronged approach. So if there's a particular area that you're concerned about, let's say the house, then you might want to take a few samples of trees right near there. And then you would want to maybe spread the rest out in a pretty even pattern. If you have the ability to walk that far in the amount of time, then, you know, spread them out. That's probably the best sampling method. But if you don't, then absolutely do what works for you in the time allotted.
Great, thanks so much.
These are great questions. These are things we should probably address in our presentations. Anything else? If we all feel comfortable about sampling and marking and finding trees, the GPS point is really the big one. So if anybody does not have the ability to use the SCOmap Mobile app, then you should probably talk to us about how else to get the location, since that's a really important piece of information. Penny, did I see your hand? Oh, we can't hear you. Penny, let me see if I can unmute you. I'm going to ask to unmute you. Do you see that button pop up?
I am.
There you go.
So I don't have any large oaks or bays on the property. So most of them are young. And so my question is, you want me to sample them again next year, if I guess if they're positive or whatever, I'm not sure. But how long do I need to leave the trees on the property? Because a lot of these do get, I mean, they're fire issues, and a lot of them get cut out by clearing crews. So I'm happy to leave them for 2 years, but how you know, what's the overall, the long-term thing here?
Alan and Janet, do you want to say anything about that?
I didn't quite understand the question. You're removing tan oaks and bays because they're a fire hazard?
Partly because they're a fire hazard, partly because there's so many of them, partly because they're not where we want them. They're weeds here.
If it's a fire hazard, I would, and it's threatening anything on, you know, well, if it's on your property, it's threatening you. That's, in my mind, more important than to get rid of them than sudden.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And I'm a big fire hazard person, but, you know, and our property is in actually really good shape. But, you know, there are tan oaks and bays that I have a choice on. And I don't particularly have a lot of use for them myself, except for feeding insects and so forth. So except for the wildlife, you know, so my question, so hence my question is that, do you want trees to be sampled that are going to be there for 10 years from now, or?
Good question. Okay, so I think I know what you're asking. So if you were already going to get rid of a host, a foliar host like a bay or a tan oak, get rid of it. That'll help stop the spread. Don't keep a tree just for the sake of having a multiple year sample. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. But thank you for being willing to do that for science, if that would have been better.
I am willing to do that for science.
And another question, if your trees tested positive last year, does it make sense to test them again, to sample again?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, the UC Berkeley actually likes you to continue to test in the areas and sometimes the same trees, especially we have the land trust, they mark their trees so that they can go back and retest. And some years when we've had a positive, the next year is a negative. And so, you know, we don't want you to think you got to take it out because it's positive at one time. So yeah, it's important to keep testing if you want, unless you make that choice to remove the tree at some point.
If it was one of those trees that Alan only could find 2 infected leaves on,
Yeah, I wouldn't.
think about, you know, bay leaves fall off every 4 or 5 years. So if there aren't very many infected leaves, it's possible that the next year there won't be any.
And it's how valuable the tree is to you. I mean, we have a area here my husband and I go to. It's an old cemetery. We like cemeteries. And they have the most incredibly beautiful bay trees. I mean, if I had one on my property, would not take it off. They're just ancient. They're beautiful. So it just depends on that too, the aesthetic that you have. And it's not going to be killed by the pathogen. It's a carrier. So it's kind of I tell you, it's a personal choice.
Well, I was thinking of it more in terms of the research, not these are trees I would not take out, but does it matter to Mateo to see that this was negative in 17 and then positive in 20 or vice versa?
Absolutely. And on the land trust people, what we do, they have a tag and a nail, an aluminum nail, and they tag the same tree that they test, and they test those on a regular basis. They're testing those trees every year. So yeah, it's valuable. That's a valuable thing for them.
Well, that is pretty much perfect timing, everybody. We have 1 minute left, so we can stay an extra few minutes if anyone has more questions. But it is about time to wrap up, and I just want to say a huge thank you to Janet and Alan for that presentation and demo. I think that's really useful, and for everybody here who came and is going to be a part of this, do tell people they can still register. They can come to the UC Cooperative Extension office tomorrow morning between 10:30 and 12:30, and I'll be there with packets that they can pick up. So if they missed the mailing deadline, they can still come get packets on their own. And that address and time is listed on the registration page, and the registration is still open. So tell your friends and neighbors. Also, make sure you get them sent in by Tuesday. If you don't get them sent in time, they won't get picked up by Berkeley in time, and they might sit too long to give a good test result. So make sure to get those postmarked by Tuesday and keep them in a cool place. You don't want to keep them in the sun to dry out or anything. And then before we say goodbye, I just want to say that about the Center for Environmental Inquiry, we have virtual events, and this is only one of 19 of them. So take a look at the recordings on our calendar page, and there's 2 more coming up. So if you're interested, we have one on water and homelessness, which is a really complex issue. And it is a student showcase of research. And that one's on May 8th. And these students have put a ton of effort into this really fascinating project. So hope you will join us for that one. And then lastly, on May 13th, is our final event of the year. It is live from the field, impacts of field research on society. So live from the field events are actually intended for undergraduate classes to be used when you can't really get outside in the way you might normally for field experiences or field trips or research. So these are aimed at undergraduate college students to get an exposure to scientists doing actual field research. And this one's going to include Pepperwood Preserve, which is one of our local preserves, and then 2 others from across the country. So we'll be able to contrast science from all over the place. It'll be really fun. And I'll go ahead and put in the chat where you can access that. Do take a look at the chat for a bunch of other websites that I've put in. I put in how you can contact the Master Gardener program, how you can contact UC Berkeley, and I'll also put in how you can contact the Center for Environmental Inquiry. I do see a question asking if this recording will be available, and it will. I will post this recording on the Center for Environmental Inquiry's calendar page under past events. And then if you scroll to this event, there'll be a link to it. So thank you again. It was a gorgeous day. I hope there's more of a gorgeous weekend, and have a happy, happy sampling. Thank you for your effort helping our oaks.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
Carrie.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. And thank you all for
Bye,
joining.
Janet. Bye, Margot.
Thank you, Janet and Alan. Bye, Suzanne.